What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Wagmi TV. Guys, there's a lot kind of going on the market, and altcoins are doing all sorts of stuff. And what we've really been looking at is really a tale of two markets here when it comes to altcoins. And so, last year or last week, we brought you guys more of a farming focused video. This week, we're going to dive into the charts. We're going to show you everything that we're seeing, everything from Bitcoin to the top altcoins that we really like right now, because we really think it could be, depending on the altcoin you're looking at, it could be a really good time to start kind of stacking and redeploying some of the capital, some of the profits that hopefully that you guys have secured here in the last few months. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to Mata to get us going on the charts. We'll be providing some color and stuff on the projects too. As always, none of this is financial advice, so um, you know, do your own research and everything. And yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, definitely was a very crazy week in crypto. I think really just taking a step back and taking this more from like a macro perspective. Obviously, everyone's eyes are really on Bitcoin at this point, and we'll talk about how that's impacted alts here in a minute. But really, from a long term perspective, right? We saw a very similar sort of price action back in March of last year, right when we actually broke those all time highs previously. We saw essentially a sideways to downward chop for the next 6 7 months till October, around October, and then we saw this awesome pump that got us up to that next level that we've kind of been operating within over the last couple weeks, and really a couple months at this point. So it's not unheard of for Bitcoin to kind of make these bull flags that we saw last year, right? And so from a macro perspective, what I essentially have stitched out here is essentially we came from an all-time high to this peak here at another all-time high, and then actually went up and tested that again here. But really what is inside these yellowish gold bars is just sideways chop, which is typically bullish as it comes off of a little flagpole like this, right? It would essentially be called a bull flag, right? So really what's happening is Bitcoin is just moving back and forth between these two lines, right around 92,000 and about 108,000. Obviously, we pierced those levels up and down at some point, just through wicks, but we haven't actually closed below or above either of those levels. So we're really just ranging in between these. And so what we're seeing with alts is as Bitcoin just ranges in this zone, they're absolutely bleeding. We saw the same thing last year when we saw the chop and kind of that bull flag as well. So it's not necessarily anything new, but as Bitcoin has small drops, maybe like 3, 4, maybe 2%, we're obviously seeing alts have some really, really terrible liquidations, right? So I think we can really expect more of the same until Bitcoin decides whether it's going to break down from this 92,000 level and send us lower, which then alts are really going to be in trouble. Or, of course, we break above this level, potentially test this blue line as some resistance, and hopefully take off to that next point. So, anything to add on Bitcoin and kind of what we're seeing here?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're completely right, and from our perspective, it's starting to feel a little bit like last summer, where you had Bitcoin kind of just ranging, and in hindsight, we all now know that it was a great time to be loading up both on Bitcoin within as it kind of ranges and DCAing in, as well as altcoins that had gotten hammered pretty hard during that kind of middle to late summer period. And so right now, it is still like the early stages, but you kind of combine like the huge liquidations that we saw and like the forced selling and the fact that Bitcoin is still remaining over 90K and still kind of in this range. You combine that with the fact that alts are looking pretty weak. And you start to see a picture of, maybe people are getting too overly bearish here. Maybe it's a time to start looking to go on a little bit of a shopping spree. Obviously, though, not all altcoins are created the same. And so we're going to dive into some charts here. Some look definitely a lot better than others, and those are the ones that we're going to be focused on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up a great point, right? We had, what was it, the biggest liquidation in crypto history last week, and Bitcoin had buyers, right? People were coming in, jumping in to buy Bitcoin. That cannot be said the same for some of these other altcoins, right? So just pulling up a few, right? Matic, we talked about this, behind the scenes on the show a few times as we were going through some of these alts, right? We saw a big pump up, we saw it drop down, and then we saw essentially what ended up being a bear flag, right? So we were talking about this flag for, gosh, probably since the end of December. We were seeing in so many charts, right? You have this move down, you have the bear flag, and then it breaks down from there. Same with this chart on EOS, right? Move up, down, bear flag, breaks down, right? Same thing with Mana, for example. Moves up, down, bear flag, breaks down, right? So we are seeing a lot of similar chart patterns on a lot of these coins, right? Some of them, not the case, right? Solana's a very good example that has acted a little bit differently, definitely gotten a lot more love. Definitely this cycle, and honestly a little bit last cycle as well. But a lot of people are utilizing it. There's a lot of users on it. So it's a little bit different than some of these other altcoins that we're looking at. As we look at some of the potentially stronger ones, right? Solana could be one of those coins, right? We're essentially on a long-term uptrend. We came into some really nice both horizontal and trend line support here. So essentially 2 levels of support. And we're really still up close to all-time highs, right? So obviously it's going to have its resistance zones. That's always going to play a part of this. But as we're looking at Solana in comparison to some of these other altcoins that are down, 40, 50% on that day of liquidation, this one's actually looking pretty strong. Anything to add about Solana specifically, Zoe?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to go through some of these coins that we feel, are outliers in terms of like their relative strength compared to the other altcoins. And Solana, obviously, each of the ones that we're going to go through actually has its own fundamental reasons why it might be acting the way it is. Solana, obviously, is the clear L1 winner of the cycle. At this point, if you want to launch a new token, almost everyone is launching either on Solana or Base. So clear winner, and obviously, with meme coins as well as Solana DeFi, everything in the Solana ecosystem is just doing very, very well and has had tremendous growth over the last couple of years. So no surprises there, and definitely one of the stronger charts that we're seeing.
Yeah, and I mean, you could also make the case that it's actually forming some bullish divergences here with RSI, right? So again, it could be a good time to accumulate some of those strong players, some of those long holds that you're thinking of holding on to for more than a couple days, and honestly, in this cycle, a couple hours, right? It feels like everyone's picking up coins and dumping them very quickly. Another one we were looking at, similar vein, very new project is Hyperliquid, right? So this one actually during those liquidations didn't get hit too hard, right? It's really been holding this, $20-ish level very, very easily, right? So this is another one that we've been looking at. I know, Soham, you were talking about this potentially on one of our episodes a couple weeks back. Mm-hmm. Anything to add on Hyperliquid and being a new project?
Definitely, on the fundamental side, they're doing record volumes on both, their spot and perps exchange. Really, really a good product. I mean, anybody who's used Hyperliquid knows that it is very solid. And team is great. They've had a phenomenal launch, and there's no reason I think that this can't. Once we kind of break out of this zone on Bitcoin, I do believe that Hyperliquid is going to do very well. And I mean, the chart is saying the same thing here. A lot of relative strength here compared to some of the other altcoins we're seeing.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on, right? And I think as far as I'm concerned, like Hyperliquid's making money, right? And I think that's a big differentiator when it comes to, potentially institutions starting to look into the crypto space and trying to figure out where to invest their money as well. They want to see profits. They want to see money being made. Some of these altcoins, they're just bleeding, right? They're just bleeding money every day that they continue to operate. So obviously Hyperliquid's a little bit different from that perspective, right? You can start to look at things like Arbitrum, some of those other areas as well. The other sector we were really looking into was AI. AI has been beaten down severely. So Fetch is a fantastic example. It's been holding this support very well. It did wick down on that liquidation day back on Monday of last week. Did wick down below this, but didn't close below that. So really this range between 70 cents and about 80 cents is a very good level as far as the support area for fetch, right? You had essentially it popped up back in the December of 23, right? We saw resistance there. It actually hit that resistance, formed a little bit of a bull flag, then blew right through it. Then on its way back down, it found support back here in August of 24 as well. You can see we're now back in that area, right? So if you all were looking at fetch back in the day, right, December of 23, and saying like, oh, I wish I had bought it, right? When it's in March and it had gone crazy, it's back to those levels, and now you have a chance at this token again, right? So I think it's some of these, it's just reframing how we're thinking about it, right? Everybody wants to buy green, but the idea is you have to be buying red in order to get those outsized gains and outsized returns. So something to consider is we're back to the levels where you wish you had bought in it back in 2024, for example. So that's a great one. We've also been looking at Prime. Prime has come into essentially two different levels of support. One, longer term trend line, essentially chopping upwards. The other being this horizontal support that it's been able to hold a couple times here in the past. Did break down one time, but again, you can see broke out above it, tested it, continued higher, and then continued to test this as well. So it's been holding really nicely up from this side. So anything on the AI tokens or
Yeah,
Fetch or Prime specifically?
narrative wise, the AI narrative speaks for itself. Obviously, it needs no introduction. It's obviously one of the hottest narratives, if not the hottest narrative in tokens. And so these are just a couple of the examples where obviously, if you watch our previous videos, we're very much on top of the latest and greatest and newest tokens in the AI space, and we'll continue to keep you guys updated there. Those are just two that stood out, more larger cap in that narrative that charts look good. But that's I think gonna do it for us today. Thanks as always for tuning in. Obviously, make sure comment, and subscribe below. If there are any other charts that you feel like we should touch on, definitely let us know in the comments below. But without not too much else to say here. Obviously, tale of two markets in the altcoin space, and we're gonna keep you guys posted on everything that's going on. So we'll see you next week on Wagmi TV.